Welcome to Trash Pickins, where we pick apart the trashiest internet culture and media. And today, we are going to pick apart probably one of the most toxic reality series on television, The Ultimatum, the Queer Love edition. We'll only be reviewing the first, how many? 8 episodes? We will only be reviewing the first episode drop, episodes 1 through 7. One of the reasons why we're also so excited to cover this is because it is the Queer Love version. So we have 6 lesbian couples, and it's Pride Month, and so we are here celebrating Pride Month with all of you.
And spoiler alert, just because it's queer doesn't mean it's any less trashy.
Agreed. I'm Lisa.
I'm Sarah.
Let's get picking.
Today's recap. The Ultimatum Season 2, Queer Love.
In case you've never had the opportunity to watch The Ultimatum Queer Love, the whole concept is basically there are a series of couples. They are at the verge of breaking up because one of them wants to commit, the other one isn't ready. So they come together, they swap partners and have trial marriages, where they then learn what they want and whether they are willing to commit to the person they arrived with, leave with the person they met, or leave single.
The show is based off the premise that having an open relationship or being polyamorous as a test is somehow a viable way to save a problematic relationship, which may or may not be true. I think in our society that's a very contentious idea, monogamy versus polyamory. So I don't really understand where the show got that idea from. It's obviously not backed by, as far as I know, any science. In the show, at least.
Why are these couples here, A, when they maybe could go to couples counseling or do something different? And then B, related, why do they think that this is a viable process? There's this whole conceit throughout that, like, we have to commit to the process of splitting up and swapping partners as if it's some sort of, like, scientifically proven to work to save your relationship process, when it's absolutely not. So, those are my first impressions.
And just as a reminder, the way this show works is one of the people in these couples creates an ultimatum saying it's time to get married or we break up. There are 6 couples that enter into this experiment, and we'll just give you a breakdown of who they are. We have AJ and Brittany, Haley and Pilar, Kyle and Bridget, Mel and Marie, Dayna and Megan, and Ashley and Marita. And while these are all contestants, we're only really going to be focusing on 6 of them because they brought out the most interesting drama in the show.
All right, so the way that the ultimatum is structured, all the couples arrive. In this case, they're in Miami. Each couple has to break up and then become exes. They get together for a, quote, dating phase. And during this time as they're dating, they're meeting other people and trying to determine who should be my trial wife. And it's ridiculous. They just keep referring to each other as exes, as if they won't get back together for their own trial marriage, 3 weeks later.
It also should be said, too, that during this dating period, the pool of other people that they're allowed to date from are obviously only the other contestants. So they all have to date each other. It's not like they can actually go out on Tinder or something and meet people. They have a small group of people and they all just have to intermingle with each other.
The original series with straight couples, they only had half the number of people to potentially pair with, but then the drama just gets multiplied by 2 in the Queer Love edition, which makes it more trashy.
After the dating period, each contestant is forced to choose a new fiancé. Then they live with this new fiancé for 3 weeks, where they get to test out what it's like to be married, to see if they like it or don't like it, or supposedly learn things about themselves. And then after those 3 weeks, they return to their original partner, who they entered the game with, to then reflect whether or not they've learned their lesson, they want to get married or leave or break up or date the new person. It's all garbage.
And actually, during the dating period, of course, the drama begins. And this leads us to the really first dramatic arc that we saw emerge in this series. So AJ, who was originally paired with Brittany, comes in strong. She is like ready to date as many people as possible. And she's connecting with Bridget. She's connecting with Marie. She's connecting with Marita. So those are her big 3. And she's trying to flirt with more.
These are my ladies. This is Jill. This is my lady Amy. Little Susie. Brianna. You know why we call her Brianna, right?
But she's love bombing the heck out of these people.
Despite AJ flirting with multiple other girls, I think she ends up she chooses Marie. And then all of the girls that were being led on by AJ kind of pile on, and there's like a big dramatic scene where they all fight with each other, which was the first spicy moment in the series, I think.
What was like crazy to me about how AJ approached this, well, first of all, she's super mask and came on as the more masculine energy, broadly speaking. That's at least how what the impression was. But the intensity of how she came into these relationships was sort of like the lock eyes, talk about physical stuff, really get the other people to just like sort of fall for her, tell them that she loves them so much. And it was like really hard to watch these other women get manipulated. But I think she did reveal at some point it was because I want to have as many people say yes to me so that she can sort of pick, right? But that's like the problem with a lot of these dating shows, I think, is when you're watching, you're sort of like, no, don't walk down that path, to the person who's walking into trouble or a red flag relationship. And we definitely had that exact type of drama with this show.
It's an interesting thing to watch and think about gender roles, because like Lisa said, AJ has a lot of stud energy and she presents very mask, and like, while not all like queer couples follow the mask and femme dynamic, there were quite a few couples in this season that did, and kind of traditionally in like straight couples, or there's an expectation where when you're dating, the man is supposed to lead, he's supposed to initiate, he's supposed to pay for the first date. I think AJ kind of took on that role a little bit, initiating with the women, making them feel good, love bombing. And while those things aren't specific to masculine energy, I do feel like we got to see that dynamic play out, and maybe in the role in which AJ felt like she had to play, in the role that these other women felt like they had to be in a receiving position. So, I don't know, kind of interesting to see that in queer couples.
Okay, so the next dramatic element that we see the producers amping up in this series is the threesome, which is effectively one couple, which is Kyle and Bridget, and then they bring Pilar into the fold. During the dating, Pilar is like drawn to both of them and can't decide, and in the end chooses Kyle. But it sort of brings up a lot of these questions around poly relationships, like could it have worked as a thruple? It's possible.
I think it's interesting too, because I feel like polyamory is having a moment. Not that it's like a new idea, but like with social media, you're seeing these like niches of people who engage in open relationships, all these sorts of things. And, more often than not, those spaces are usually overrun by monogamous people like shitting on polyamorous people, usually. So, without taking a side, I do think it's in the public sphere more. It's talked about much more. So I think it kind of makes sense that there's a show that's, I don't know, in some way focusing on that, even though I don't think it's a thoughtful reflection at all.
Yeah, I think it alludes to themes that polyamorous thruples, couples, groups would deal with, but they don't actually acknowledge it, nor do they accept it. And I think it's more similar to like swingers.
Which, I think it's kind of interesting that the three of them kind of got the thruple narrative pushed on them, even though it didn't really happen. Because later on in the season, Pilar and Kyle end up becoming the new, the trial wives. And then they have that little incident between them where sort of like boundaries are crossed. Kyle supposedly was giving mixed signals about whether or not she wanted to be intimate with her new trial wife. And then the trial wife supposedly came on to her potentially unwanted. It was unclear. They didn't make it clear to us, but they had conversations about boundaries and consent. And, I think that was interesting to see, because had they really been a throuple, I'm not sure that would cause so much drama about infidelity,
I did find it interesting that the producers did emphasize this and make it like a big dramatic component, because I feel like in years past, this type of thing wouldn't really ever come up. Like occasionally you'd see arguing later, especially with some of the Ultimatum early seasons or the Ultimatum in other country editions, where they'll have the couples come back together, learn that they had been intimate with another trial partner, and then get get angry and there's blow-ups around that. But in this case, we actually get to see the sort of negotiation of consent and boundaries within a couple, which has, to my mind, never really been emphasized in any recent reality TV, at least that I've seen. And the amount of remorse and pain that Pilar exhibits and the confusion that Kyle expresses, I think is actually quite important. You know, generally this stuff is trash, but I do think there are kind of like, quote, teachable moments where you can sort of highlight some, you know, the types of discussions or conversations or arguments that happen between couples to like sort of normalize them. And I just feel like having a conversation about that was actually a good thing to highlight for viewers at some level, just because it's slightly less trashy and important and in alignment with sort of cultural trends around consent. So I thought that was worth mentioning as well. Okay, so the final big dramatic element is the most toxic couple, drumroll, Dayna and Mel. I'd say actually that Dayna probably should get the most toxic individual, and I want to break down why. So originally when they start, Megan, her original partner, is expressing that she doesn't want to be a part of this. She's uncomfortable. She doesn't like to see Dayna flirting with Mel, getting into somebody else, and she just wants to go home. And that moment, Dana's like,
no, you need to put up with it. You need to do hard things. We need to commit to the process you promised you would.
Right, so there's that coercion, that pressure, that manipulation, which is really hard to watch as well. And then as it unfolds, you know, Dayna develops a relationship with Mel and becomes really upset when she learns that Megan has a relationship with her trial wife as well. So there's a whole lot going on there, but there's a lot of double standards, a lot of emotions going all over the place. Yeah.
I think also to add a few points too, the reason this one is so dramatic is because obviously the show was filmed. So we see the trial marriage between Dayna and Mel. You know, there's cameras in their apartment. So, you know, they secretly filmed them having sex. And then later on, when the couple's confronted, did you have sex? They say, no, we didn't. You know, so they lie about it. But there's receipts, obviously, because it's all filmed. You know, so as we're watching it, we know the truth and we can see them lying and being deceitful.
I really hope that coming out of this, they all do go through some self-reflection and can kind of improve ways that they communicate and treat partners. That said, you know, it is hard if anybody has had a similar experience and those emotions flare up with which the producers are absolutely counting on. And so at some level, it also feels unfair to the contestants because, yeah, you know, they pick these people because they know that they're volatile, that they know that they're going to like double speak and do these things. And then they sort of put them out there. Oh, do your thing. They self-destruct, they sabotage, they say dramatic things. Their life blows up in fantastic form and they become like the villain. And so it's hard to watch for that reason as well. So
we talked about this, Lisa, while we were watching it, where I was saying how everybody's so used to the idea of having a good edit now. It's so talked about online. Like, I got the villain edit. I got the sweetheart edit, whatever, you know, and we almost expect that watching reality TV as viewers. But Dayna and Mel, like, unless this is completely fabricated, in the show, they very much just bluntly lied to their partners. When their partners said, were you intimate with your trial wife? They said no, but we actually see them secretly being intimate. So to me, I'm like, they just knew they were going to get the villain edit. And then I was like, what kind of person would go on reality TV, know that you're going to be filmed? Like, maybe they thought they weren't being filmed. I don't know. But know that you're most likely going to be filmed being intimate and then try to lie about it and then have that lie, like, put on national television. I don't understand that type of person. And that's why I'm like, is all of this completely fake? Because that's a really insane casting to find somebody who thinks that they can get away with that lie on TV. You know?
Yeah. No, it's a really good point. Either that or they're so self-focused and they're not aware at a certain point. Can you really become that comfortable with cameras around? Maybe. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It is quite odd. Another thing that I thought was really interesting this round, we had two couples where the ultimatum receivers said that they didn't want to commit or get married because of their traditional families. So one would be Haley and Pilar. Pilar's from a conservative, very traditional family. but she's not comfortable getting married because of her family. And then the other one was Megan. Megan is from a Lebanese family, and also they don't accept her. And so it's a difficult step for these two cast members to come out and to be that open and get married. So they actually come in, Pilar and Megan, still very much loving their partners and feeling like their feet are put to the fire, which is quite unique. Like in most other instances of ultimatum couples, the one who receives the ultimatum is non-committal, they're not really sure, they're not really into it, kind of like AJ style energy. Maybe they'll try something else, like Mel style energy. But this is like, feels like a particular like level of abuse, because now they're gonna be on national television and they're out, even though they would have to consent to that. But also that they maybe didn't even want to go through any of this. They wanted to go it at their own pace. So I don't know. I just thought that was another level of toxicity kind of baked into this that was worth pointing out.
It's important to mention that because I think that's actually like the only bit of the show that isn't trashy, because that's actually like a very real, difficult thing that a lot of queer people have to deal with. Reality TV homogenizes its contestants to all have like a certain level of like simplicity or emotional reactiveness or I don't know, not deep depthful thinking, and maybe even egotism. I feel like no matter whether you're queer, straight, or whatever, that's kind of the route. You have to be that way in order to be on this show. And I'm sure that these people are interesting, depthful people, but the show and the producers obviously highlight the things that are just more about like raw emotion, jealousy, infidelity. Like the fact that they constantly edit, like create fake edits where they're trying to show their partners like glaring at each other as if they're jealous when they're not. They just like, put an insert that obviously wasn't existing in that moment, So I think the characters or the people who fall in line with that are going to be featured more.
So in closing, no matter what, all these participants thought that somehow being involved in this reality show would save their marriage, potential marriage, or help them in some way, which still is beyond me. We'll have to just stay tuned and see what happens. But, I don't know that in any of these cases that the couples generally tend to leave with anybody that they met. But it's odd. I think sometimes people who watch this start to root for the new couples because they see how the old couple arrangement didn't work. I know I find myself doing that sometimes, so I'm very curious to see how many of these relationships like Haley and Megan, for instance, or Mel and Dayna are actually going to stick, or if it's just going to cause a massive wedge in their pre-existing relationship. So I don't know. More drama to be had, and we're going to cover it here.
We're going to wait till part 2 comes out, but probably in our second review, I think it would be interesting to dive deeper into the idea of whether or not opening your marriage can help it or hurt it. In our society, monogamy is clearly preferred, but I think that there's actually a lot of interesting science and, social studies about that sort of stuff. So we'll see what happens. I don't think anything's going to work out just because it's on reality TV, but I guess we'll see.
I mean, yeah, we'll see how the experiment works. Anyway, thanks for joining us on Trash Pickins, and we'll see you next time.
Happy Pride.
Happy Pride!